There's a shelf in every family's memory. Maybe it was in a basement. Maybe it was a closet next to the water heater. Maybe it was just 3 rows of jars above the kitchen counter. But someone in your family, probably a woman, kept that shelf stocked. And the things she put on it were not random. She was not following a trend. She was not watching a video. She was solving a problem that most modern households have completely forgotten how to solve. How do you feed a family when money is tight, when the store is far, and when nothing can go to waste? During the Great Depression, roughly 1 in 4 American workers had no job. Families survived on creativity, community, and a handful of pantry staples that asked almost nothing of them in return. They did not spoil. They did not need refrigeration. They stretched across dozens of meals, and they cost almost nothing. Here's the part that surprised me. When you check those same items against modern food science, against the U.S. Department of Agriculture FoodKeeper database, against the research at Utah State University Extension, the data confirms what your grandmother already knew. These foods last longer, cost less per serving, and deliver more nutrition than most of what fills a modern grocery cart. Every claim in this video is sourced. Every shelf life number comes from government data or university research. And I think by the end of this list, you will look at your own pantry a little differently. Let us begin. Number 12, white vinegar. Think about the bottle of vinegar sitting in your cabinet right now. When did you buy it? Can you remember? Most people cannot, because vinegar is one of those things that just quietly exists in the background of a kitchen. You reach for it when a recipe calls for it. You use it to clean the coffee maker, and then it goes back on the shelf. During the Depression, white vinegar was not a background player. It was essential. Families used it for pickling vegetables from the garden so nothing went to waste. They used it as a cleaning solution when commercial products were unaffordable. They used it in baking as a leavening agent with baking soda when eggs were scarce. And here is why your grandmother was right to keep it. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration confirms that plain distilled white vinegar remains stable indefinitely. It does not expire. Its acidity, which typically sits around 5%, is hostile to bacteria. A bottle of white vinegar purchased today will be just as effective in 20 years as it is right now. A gallon of white vinegar costs roughly $3 to $4, approximate and varies by region. For a multi-purpose pantry staple with an infinite shelf life, that might be the best value in the grocery store. Number 11, rolled oats. There's a morning that happens in every household where time is short, energy is low, and nobody wants to think about breakfast. Oatmeal handles that morning. A pot of water, a cup of oats, 5 minutes, and everyone is fed. During the Depression, oats were among the cheapest grains available. A large canister could feed a family breakfast for weeks. Oatmeal with a spoon of honey or a sprinkle of cinnamon was not just a meal. It was warmth on a cold morning when everything else felt uncertain. The U.S. Department of Agriculture FoodKeeper database confirms that rolled oats maintain quality for 1 to 2 years in standard pantry storage. But Utah State University Extension research shows that oats sealed in airtight containers with oxygen absorbers can last for decades. The food science shows that oats are a source of beta-glucan, a type of soluble fiber. They fill you up, they cost pennies per serving, and they sit on your shelf asking nothing of you until the morning you need them. Buy a large canister. If you want longer storage, pour them into a mason jar with a tight lid. Your grandmother did exactly this. Number 10, dried beans. There is a pot of soup that feeds 6 people for under $2. It starts with a cup of dried beans, an onion, a few spices, and water. That is the meal that carried families through the hardest years in American history, and it is still one of the most cost-effective meals you can make today. Navy beans, pinto beans, lentils. These were the protein source for families who could not afford meat more than once or twice a week. A 1-pound bag of dried beans costs roughly $1 to $1.50, approximate and varies by region, and provides 8 to 10 servings of complete plant protein. Utah State University conducted research showing that dried beans stored in sealed containers with oxygen absorbers retained 80% consumer acceptance in taste panels after 30 years. 3 decades. The beans were still edible and still nutritionally valuable. In standard pantry storage in an airtight container, dried beans maintain quality for 2 to 3 years easily. Buy a few pounds of whatever beans your household actually uses. Store them in a jar or a sealed container. They take up almost no space and they will wait for you. Number 9, powdered milk. There is a recipe calling for milk and your fridge is empty. There is a child who needs cereal. There is a batch of biscuits that needs 2/3 of a cup of milk and you are not making a trip to the store for it. During the Depression, fresh milk was a luxury for many families. It spoiled quickly without reliable refrigeration. Powdered milk solved that problem. You could store it for months, reconstitute exactly what you needed, and never worry about waste. Utah State University Extension confirms that non-fat dry milk, when sealed properly and stored in cool conditions, can last 20 years or longer. The U.S. Department of Agriculture FoodKeeper recommends using opened powdered milk within 3 months for best quality, but sealed containers last far beyond that. A box of powdered milk costs a few dollars and takes up less space than a single-gallon jug. Keep one in the back of your pantry. You will reach for it more often than you think. Number 8. Cornmeal. There is a cast iron skillet on a stovetop and a simple batter of cornmeal, an egg, a splash of buttermilk, and a pinch of salt. Cornbread. It is one of the most iconic Depression-era foods because the ingredients were dirt cheap and corn grew almost everywhere in America. Families stretched cornmeal across breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Cornmeal mush for breakfast, cornbread with soup for lunch, fried cornmeal cakes for dinner. 1 bag, 3 meals, almost no cost. The U.S. Department of Agriculture FoodKeeper database lists degerminated cornmeal as maintaining quality for about 1 year in pantry storage. Stored in a sealed container in a cool, dry place, it lasts considerably longer. Whole grain cornmeal has a shorter life because of the natural oils in the germ, so if long storage is the goal, degerminated is the better choice. A 2-pound bag of cornmeal costs roughly $2 to $3, approximate and varies by region, and makes dozens of batches of cornbread. Your grandmother could feed a table of 8 for less than $1. You can still do something very close to that today. Number 7. Honey. There is a jar in someone's memory. Maybe it was your mother's kitchen, maybe it was your grandmother's. A jar of honey that seemed to have always been there. Not new, not old, just there, always there. That jar was not expired. It could not expire. The National Honey Board, which operates as an instrumentality of the U.S. Department of Agriculture, confirms that honey stored in sealed containers can remain stable for decades and even centuries. Archaeologists have found pots of honey in Egyptian tombs that are over 3,000 years old, and when tested, the honey was still edible. The reason is chemistry. Honey's moisture content is naturally below 18%. Its pH is acidic, and it produces small amounts of hydrogen peroxide, which inhibits bacterial growth. These 3 properties create an environment where spoilage simply cannot take hold. During the Depression, honey was often the only sweetener families could get locally. Refined sugar was expensive, but a neighbor with a few beehives could trade a jar of honey for a dozen eggs or a pound of butter. It sweetened oatmeal, preserved fruit, soothed sore throats, and lasted forever. One important note: honey should never be given to infants under 12 months old. It can contain Clostridium botulinum spores that are harmless to older children and adults, but dangerous for babies. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and the FDA both confirm this. Buy a large jar, stored in the pantry at room temperature. If it crystallizes, that is completely normal and does not indicate spoilage. Set the jar in a bowl of warm water, and it will return to liquid. I am betting most of you had a grandmother or a mother who kept a jar of honey that seemed to last forever. Am I right? Or was it something else she always had in the back of the pantry? Tell me below. I love hearing these stories. Number 6. Canned tomatoes. There is a January evening where the garden is bare and the fresh tomatoes at the store are pale and flavorless and $3 each. But the jar of tomatoes that was put up last August is sitting on the shelf, bright red and ready. Soup, sauce, stew, chili, done. Home canning was not a hobby during the Depression. It was survival. Families grew tomatoes in backyard gardens and canned them by the bushel because a jar of home-canned tomatoes in February meant the difference between a meal with flavor and a meal without. Today, you do not need to can your own. Commercially canned tomatoes are one of the best values in the grocery store. The U.S. Department of Agriculture Food Safety and Inspection Service confirms that canned goods maintain best quality for 2 to 5 years and may remain safe even longer if the can is undamaged and properly stored. A case of 12 cans costs roughly $10 to $15, approximate and varies by region. That is a year of soup bases, pasta sauces, and casserole starters for less than the cost of a single restaurant meal. If any of this is helping you think about your pantry differently, a quick like helps this reach more households who could use this kind of quiet, sourced information. No pressure at all. Let us keep going. Number 5. White rice. There is a version of dinner that every family falls back on when the money is tight and the fridge is bare. Rice and beans. Rice and a fried egg. Rice with whatever is left in the pantry. It is the quiet backbone of affordable eating, and it has been exactly that for generations. During the Depression, rice was not as common in American households as it is today, but families in the South and in port cities knew its value. A small amount fed a crowd. It stretched every protein further, and it stored without complaint. Utah State University Extension confirms that white rice stored at 70 degrees Fahrenheit or below in airtight containers can last up to 30 years. At 40 degrees, the same rice maintains quality essentially indefinitely. That is not a typo. 3 decades of shelf life from a product that costs roughly 50 cents per pound. The key is the milling. White rice has had its bran and germ removed, which removes the oils that cause brown rice to go rancid in 6 to 12 months. Brown rice is more nutritious in the short term, but white rice is the long storage champion. Your grandmother knew this even if she did not know the science behind it. Buy a large bag. Pour it into a food-grade bucket or a sealed container. It will outlast almost everything else in your pantry. Number 4, salt. Think about every meal you have ever enjoyed. Every single one had salt in it. Salt is not optional in cooking. It is the ingredient that makes every other ingredient taste like itself. Without it, food is flat. With it, food becomes a meal. Salt does not expire. Pure sodium chloride is a mineral, not an organic compound. It does not spoil, it does not degrade, it does not lose potency. The U.S. Department of Agriculture confirms that salt is shelf-stable indefinitely. The best-by dates printed on salt containers refer to the potency of added iodine, not to the safety of the salt itself. During the Depression, salt served an even more critical role. It was the primary preservation method for meat in households without reliable refrigeration. Salt curing, salt brining, salt packing. Families who had salt could preserve protein. Families who ran out of salt were in trouble. A large container of salt costs about $1. It weighs almost nothing in your grocery cart, and it will outlast you, your children, and your grandchildren. Keep extra, always. Number 3, lard and cooking fat. There is a biscuit recipe that your great-grandmother made that was better than anything you have ever tasted from a bakery. The secret was almost certainly lard. Before the rise of vegetable oils in the mid-20th century, lard was the default cooking fat in American kitchens. It was free if you raised pigs. It was cheap if you did not. Families rendered it themselves, strained it through cheesecloth, and stored it in crocks. It made flaky pie crusts, it fried chicken, it greased cast iron, it did everything. The U.S. Department of Agriculture FoodKeeper database lists commercially rendered lard as maintaining quality for about 1 year at room temperature. Refrigerated, it lasts longer. Home-rendered lard that is properly strained and sealed can last months without refrigeration. Modern dietary guidance has evolved since the Depression, and this video is not making any health claims about lard versus other cooking fats. What is worth noting is the practical lesson. Depression-era families used every part of the animal and wasted nothing. The fat was not discarded, it was a resource. That principle, using what you have and wasting nothing, is timeless even if the specific fat you choose has changed. Number 2, baking soda. There is a box in your cabinet right now. It has probably been there for a while, and it is almost certainly still perfectly fine. Baking soda, sodium bicarbonate, is one of the most versatile items ever to sit on a pantry shelf. During the Depression, it was a leavening agent for biscuits and cornbread when commercial baking powder was too expensive. It was a cleaning agent for pots and pans. It was a deodorizer for the icebox. It was a remedy for heartburn. One box, dozens of uses. Baking soda does not expire in terms of safety. It can lose some leavening potency over time, which the U.S. Department of Agriculture FoodKeeper notes may happen after about 6 months once opened. But the compound itself, sodium bicarbonate, is chemically stable indefinitely. You can test its potency with a simple trick. Drop a teaspoon into vinegar. If it fizzes vigorously, it is still active. If it fizzes weakly, use it for cleaning and buy a fresh box for baking. A box of baking soda costs less than $1. Buy 2. Your grandmother always had an extra. Number 1, flour. I saved this one for last because it is the most important item on the list and also the most misunderstood. There is a kitchen scene that played out in millions of American homes during the Depression. A woman standing at a wooden counter with a bowl of flour, a scoop of lard, a pinch of salt, and a splash of water. Biscuits. The simplest possible bread. No yeast, no eggs, no milk if you did not have it. Just flour, fat, salt, and hands that knew what they were doing. Flour was the backbone of Depression-era cooking. It made biscuits, gravy, pie crust, dumplings, noodles, thickened soups, coated fried meat. Families bought it in 25-pound sacks because nothing else stretched as far. Now, flour is the most perishable item on this list, and I want to be honest about that. The U.S. Department of Agriculture FoodKeeper database lists all-purpose white flour as maintaining quality for 6 to 8 months at room temperature. In the freezer, it lasts 1 to 2 years. That is nothing compared to the 30-year shelf life of rice or the infinite shelf life of honey. But that is exactly why flour earned the #1 spot. Of all 12 items on this list, flour is the one that teaches the deepest lesson about proper food storage. Depression-era families stored flour in metal tins with tight lids to keep out moisture and insects. They bought it frequently and rotated it constantly. They did not expect it to last forever. They expected it to work hard and be replaced. The lesson is not that flour lasts forever. The lesson is that flour is too important to ever run out of. It is the single most versatile ingredient in cooking. If you have flour, salt, and a fat, you can feed a family. That was true in 1933, and it is true today. Keep a 5-pound bag in the pantry. Keep a backup in the freezer. Rotate it, use it, replace it. That is what your grandmother did, and she fed a family on almost nothing. Here is the thread that runs through all 12 of these items. Your grandmother did not have a food science degree. She did not have a U.S. Department of Agriculture database. She did not have a video telling her what to keep on her shelf. She had experience, she had necessity, and she had a kind of practical intelligence that gets undervalued in a world full of convenience foods and 2-day delivery. And when modern food science finally caught up, when the researchers at Utah State University tested 30-year-old beans and found them still edible, when the National Honey Board confirmed that honey lasts centuries, when the FDA confirmed that vinegar and salt never expire, all the data said the same thing. She was right. This video is for educational purposes. It is not financial advice, medical advice, or a prediction of any specific event. All prices mentioned are approximate and vary by region and retailer. This is not an argument that modern food is bad or that we should return to Depression-era living. The Depression was a period of enormous hardship. What we are honoring is the practical wisdom that came from that hardship, wisdom that modern food science has confirmed. Here is the prescription. On your next grocery trip, look at your pantry through your grandmother's eyes. Pick 2 items from this list that you are low on or do not have at all: a jar of honey and a bag of rice, a box of baking soda and a bag of dried beans. Total cost under $10. That is it. Let me run through all 12 one more time. Number 12, white vinegar. Number 11, rolled oats. Number 10, dried beans. Number 9, powdered milk. Number 8, cornmeal. Number 7, honey. Number 6, canned tomatoes. Number 5, white rice. Number 4, salt. Number 3, lard and cooking fat. Number 2, baking soda. And number 1, flour. 12 items. Most of them cost $1 or $2. Several of them literally never expire. And every single one of them was chosen by millions of families during the hardest years this country has ever known. Which one of these was always in your grandmother's kitchen? I would love to hear that story. Drop it below. Take care.